Lafayette Hotel was the last of the large hotels to be built at Lake Minnetonka. It was built for James J. Hill, who was president and owner of the St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Manitoba Railroad that later became the Great Northern. It was built in 1882 and cost, when all additions were completed, nearly $500,000. Hill and Associates had bought almost 1,000 acres of land on Lake Minnetonka in the 1870s and retained the Minnetonka Beach parcel for the hotel. Building the hotel was more of a land scheme than anything else for Hill. He platted the rest of the land around the hotel to nearly 400 different lots and then offered those for sale for cottagers. So the hotel acted as an allurement for people to come visit and then see the land where they could have their own personal resort. It was also a loss leader for his railroad because of the popularity of the hotel. Hundreds of thousands of people were traveling the railroad to Lake Minnetonka over the Great Northern Line. In 1 year alone, they would estimate just revenue from railroad traffic to Lake Minnetonka was nearly $50,000. Hotel Lafayette was designed by architect Leroy Buffington, who also designed Hotel St. Louis and the Lake Park Hotel. Initially, the hotel was only 700 feet long, and immediately upon opening, Hill realized that this was way too small, and as soon as the last tourist left in September of 1882, he had crews working to extend the hotel and make it 800 feet long. In total, it was 4 floors, 800 feet long, 400 rooms. It was built with a hydraulic elevator, which had only been invented in 1879. It had miles and miles of wire, not for lights, but for call buttons. People could press a button in the room on the 4th floor, and then one of the staff members would trundle up the 4 floors to the room, knock on the door, ask what they wanted. They'd tell him, and then he'd go back down the 4 floors and get what they needed, and then back up to their room with their cigarettes or their lunch menu or whatever they might have needed. James J. Hill also wanted to control all the lake tourist industry, so he monopolized all the boat traffic on the lake. In 1882, he launched his 285-foot-long Belle of Minnetonka, which he ran in conjunction with his railroad and his hotel. That proved to be kind of a liability because it was just certainly way too big for the amount of lake traffic and tourists that were at Lake Minnetonka. And following 1886, it was rarely used, and by the 1890s was moored in St. Albans Bay permanently. With the institution of the Interstate Commerce Act in 1887, traffic to Lake Minnetonka declined, and Hotel Lafayette never again ran a profit. One of the interesting events happened in September of 1883 when American royalty came to Hotel Lafayette in the form of President Chester A. Arthur and former President Ulysses S. Grant. There were also 9 Civil War generals and 9 state governors that all came and had a grand meal at Hotel Lafayette. The sale of liquor became an issue as well at Hotel Lafayette, which, when it was built, was still inside the limits of Excelsior Township, which was a dry township, so making the sale of liquor illegal. Hill and his manager, Eugene Mayle, devised a plan in 1884. They seceded from Excelsior Township and became part of Medina Township, which allowed the sale of alcohol. During the 1890s, the hotel started becoming run down and fell into disrepair. It wasn't attracting as many tourists as it was, and in 1897 was their last full year. Following the end of the season, they closed up the building, shut down all the water supply from the big water tank outside, and on October 4th, a fire developed in the laundry facilities, which was in a separate building, but with the prevailing winds, the fire migrated to Hotel Lafayette, and within moments, the entire building was engulfed in flames. In an hour, it had been reduced to ashes. People thought that the hotel was a victim of arson, but Hill only had $65,000 worth of insurance on the hotel, and the salvage of the hotel could have been worth nearly that much. So whether or not it was arson is still up for debate. Following the fire of the hotel, Hill finally sold the hotel property in 1899. He sold it to what later became the Lafayette Club. The Lake Minnetonka Club was formed in April of 1899, and a year later, in April 1900, it had a name change to become the Lafayette Club. The club built its first clubhouse in 1900. That burned in 1922, and now the current structure was built in 1924.